Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our final panel on this track, one that I'm really looking forward to, the content machine that turned Jenni Kayne into a $100 million brand in 3 years. Please join me in welcoming Emily Hickey from the Chief Detective Growth Consulting and Alexa Ritacco, the Chief Marketing Officer at Jenni Kayne.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alexa Ritacco. I'm the CMO at Jenni Kayne. Really exciting to be here to talk to you about what we've built. I have been at Jenni Kayne a little bit over 4 years and in the e-commerce space for over 7. My background's in fashion and e-commerce, and I've been very lucky to be a part of the team that has grown Jenni Kayne from $8 million in revenue to over $100 million in revenue.
Hey guys, I'm Emily Hickey. I run Chief Detective. We're a boutique Facebook and Instagram ad agency. We manage, spend, and develop ad creative for about 20 clients. I also serve as an outside CMO for a few of our clients, including Jenni Kayne, where I've been a fractional CMO and board member since 2018. And it's really been an honor to work on this brand. And with Alexa and her team, it's just such a special brand. So we're excited to share some of the pieces that we've put together to drive the social and the creative side.
So our overarching goal at Jenni Kayne is we would like to be a $1 billion lifestyle brand. We, as you can see on the chart, started at $8 million in 2018. In 2021, we hit $100 million, and now this year we are planning to do about $150. Our primary channels for growth have been digital, catalog, and retail, and Facebook and Instagram far and away has been our largest channel for acquisition. So our biggest key to this growth has been in partnership with Emily's team building this creative machine, and it's essentially just this force we've put together across our teams to constantly be cranking out creative. And this has driven growth across apparel, home, and beauty. We've really evolved and adapted this strategy over the years to resonate with our audience, and we've defined our audience as women aged 26 to 55 who are looking to embrace that Jenni Kayne lifestyle of living well. And we make a point to never just show a product in our content. We are always pushing an entire lifestyle. So a few examples of that. So here you have the seemingly similar images, the same outfit, the same shot, same model. And we put these into categories. So this is a specific example versus a neutral example. And the major difference here is that the specific example highly outperformed the neutral example. And that's because of these lifestyle cues. So on the left, you have the Moroccan rug, you have the wooden bench, all of the natural textures. And while the image on the right is great and the sweater still looks beautiful, it just doesn't perform. On the left here, you have the mules on a Moroccan rug, which has become sort of our most iconic lifestyle cue, versus on the right, still a very clean, beautiful image, but just doesn't have those cues that perform. And then you have this one. You have the model who kind of sort of melts into the background. The sweater still looks beautiful. The shoes still pop. But on the left, you have the model with the hands in the pocket, the movement. You have the sweater tucked in a little bit, and it just far and away performs better. And then this is my personal favorite. It is exactly the same shot setup, essentially the same sweater, but with just in the corners of the image on the left, you have that Moroccan rug, and that just is what sets our imagery apart from the rest.
Okay, so you can probably already tell how native content is at Jenni Kayne. I really think it's the biggest strength of what they've built is that they've developed this creative flywheel that they can now point at any category that they want to develop. And I think in general, for most direct-to-consumer companies, content and creative is kind of the thing that's sitting in front of them is the biggest step function revenue change opportunity that they just have trouble sort of pulling together for various reasons. I think generally what we've seen with direct-to-consumer companies is there are 3 areas that you can really hammer and that you always need to come back to drive true step function revenue change. So not incremental, but true big leaps forward in revenue. And it starts with product assortment. That's the first one, right? So when you look at a puppy and its paws are a certain size, that's how you tell, you know immediately how big the puppy's going to be as a dog. And it's the same thing with a company. When you look at the product assortment, it's pretty clear how big that thing can be. I think it really sets the potential height of what you can develop. And if you're ever trying to change the potential height, the assortment has to change first, right? I think it also develops a lot of margin for error. I think one of the things about building businesses that you forget is that you can screw up a lot. You can mess up a lot of things when your product assortment is killer, right? So product assortment, I think, is first plank on driving step function revenue change. The second plank is buying and planning. So you want the right depth and the right stuff. And I think it's just a fact of e-commerce that B products do not drive acquisition ever. A products drive acquisition, and that they always will, right? So you have to have a really clear understanding of what your ad-supported styles are and what your ad-supported products are going to be, and then have the depth aligned against those. You need predictability around those from season to season, year to year, and that's how you grow out this portfolio of A products, and that's really what drives acquisition. And then content and creative is the third plank, and this is the one where I think is the most under-leveraged for most direct-to-consumer companies. And you tend to see it as being like a very diffuse and fragmented part of organizations. But the minute they pull these efforts together into a consolidated kind of core muscle group of the organization, it changes the revenue trajectory of the company. So I really think this is the most under-leveraged component that you can put in place to change a company. I think probably everybody has experienced that like a killer image or video drives a ton of revenue, whereas if you could kind of tweak your welcome sequence or series, that really does almost nothing. So step function change, I think it's really good to like embrace that content and creative really are an atomic unit of growing a contemporary, modern, direct-to-consumer business. I think content and creative is really important for a second reason, which is more tactical but super tied to revenue, which is that if you're marketing on digital channels, you are playing a creative game, whether you want to or not. Anything that's driven by an algorithm as a marketing channel is a creative game, period. So for example, the way that Facebook and Instagram work is that every user is assigned a value by the algorithm, but iOS 14 or not, every site in the world is pixeled, and so it knows everything about everybody. So it knows that, I'm going to pick on Alexa, that Alexa clicks and purchases and spends $1,000 without thinking twice about it. She's currently shopping for towels and sweaters, where it knows that Emily just clicks and never purchases, and there's a huge difference in the value that we represent to the advertising algorithm. So the whole game with Facebook is to try to get access to the Alexas. So if you think you're targeting a 3 million person audience, you're actually targeting the 250,000 people within that audience who are very likely to purchase your product. And the minute you win access to those people, the performance on your ad spend completely changes. So Facebook guards them with iron gates because they can't have Alexa getting bored and spending less time on the platform. So the content, the ad content that they serve Alexa has to be as interesting to her as the organic content that they serve to her. So the pressure on the brands is not, you don't win the auction market with the highest bid. They've been very clear about that. You win it by adding the most total value to the newsfeed. So it's the right ad to the right person at the right time. That's what they're trying to accomplish. So if your creative is not relevant, the operating concept is relevance, then you get relegated back to this sort of purgatory of crappy impressions, right? And the minute you get into those kernels of audiences, everything changes, right? So it is, if you're doing digital marketing, you are playing a creative game, and it's something that you want to get good at.
So we've worked really hard over the past 4 years or so to build on that notion of relevancy and making sure our content is hitting. And we've sort of developed this content recipe that we've put into 4 pillars. And first and foremost is in-house studio shoots, your straightforward e-commerce shoot. We do these once a quarter. It produces content for all channels. We try to put in the lifestyle cues where we can with the backgrounds, playing with the textures. This is typically imagery only, and our brand team runs these with the ads team giving requests and direction where we can. Next, we have our lifestyle shoots. These happen 1 to 2 times per quarter. They're typically shot in a beautiful location or house. We try to match seasonality. So if it's a spring shoot, we'll do it in the sunshine in Santa Ynez. Or if it's a winter shoot, we might do it in a mountain home in Lake Tahoe with the snow. We get a ton of imagery and video from these shoots. And again, the brand team runs these with the ads team making requests. Next, we have our team UGC. This has been one of the biggest unlocks for our content strategy. We have an amazing group of mostly women. We have a couple of men now. And we will gift anyone who's interested products every month and invite our team to go out and shoot some top performing content. We get a ton of imagery and video from this. Our ad team will give super specific direction and examples of content that's worked in the past, and this is content that we're getting monthly, and we get a ton of it, and it really, really performs. And then lastly, we have our creator and influencer UGC. We're getting this content every week, if not every day at this point. And we get this mainly through our ambassador program and our paid influencer partnerships. So our brand team owns the ambassador side of things, and our growth and ads team owns the paid influencer partnerships. So just to sum it all up, this is our content recipe. We have in-house studio shoots, we have in-house lifestyle shoots, we have our team UGC cranking, and then that influencer and creator UGC. And this is all managed by the brand and content team in partnership with the growth team on the team UGC and the influencer UGC, with varying costs, with the team UGC being super inexpensive and then the higher production value shoots being a bit more expensive and less frequent. A little bit about our ambassador and influencer program. So we currently have an ambassador program of about 150 women. We've really casted a wide net here. We have people who have 5,000 followers to up to 500,000 followers in the program. And we kind of look at this as a twofold approach. Half of it is organic seeding. We're getting into these followings, once a month. They're getting repetition about Jenni Kayne. And then half of it is vetting for the strongest bit of creators. We've learned that about 80% of our revenue from the program comes from only 20% of the creators. And then only about 10% of that content ends up becoming a hit ad driving across performance marketing channels. And then the program itself, our ambassadors get 2 to 3 Jenni Kayne items per month. They get a personal code that we track revenue on and they get a commission of. They get a direct line to the Jenni Kayne team, and then our brand team manages that using Grin. And then we get constant monthly exposure from each ambassador on Instagram. We get the posts, we get the stories, high-res imagery, and then across-channel content rights. And overall, this program gives us about a 6x ROAS, and that's just on the cost of the program and the revenue being driven by the codes. And then the real, even more incremental value is coming from that constant flow of content.
Okay, so you can imagine that we're getting thousands of assets from Alexa's team at this point, and it wasn't always that way. I mean, 4 years ago it was minimal, but now the content machine is at full velocity, so it's a lot. And the thing about playing a creative game, which is what we're doing, is that we cannot just throw untested assets into your scale campaigns. Like, we would never, ever, ever do that. So what happens if you do that and they're not good is that you get penalized. So imagine if you sent a catalog to someone and it was boring, you never get to send a catalog to that person again. That doesn't exist, right? You can send them as many catalogs as you want. But on an algorithm-based platform, you actually get penalized. So remember that, like, the kernels of the audience that we talked about, if we send boring stuff that isn't relevant into scale campaigns, and we send negative signals to the algorithm, then we get penalized and ratcheted back down in terms of the quality of impressions that we're accessing. So everything gets tested first, and the way that this is an example, this cotton cocoon cardigan was restocked. We got a bunch of assets for it across, influencer, lifestyle, e-com shoots, laydowns. Test through everything, and if we had guessed, we probably would have said that middle image was the best image, and we would have thrown that into a scale campaign and been penalized for it. But actually, that was in the bottom of the images. The top image was the black laydown with the neckline, which is a weird shot, right? And then the e-com image on the right was kind of middle of the pack. So it's just a good example of, like, you can't guess, you have to test. And it's probably the single biggest mistake we see companies making, is that everything just goes right into scale. You've got to test it. And then the second piece that we test is messaging, right? And this is where you really start to get a very crisp sense of your customer. So if I had to sell you something, I think you could skin the cat a lot of ways. We do a process we call it value prop stack ranking, where we research a product and try to figure out what are all the things that we could say to possibly sell something. And then we write headlines to represent all of those value props, and then we test those headlines. So if I were gonna sell you a pair of leggings, I always use leggings as an example because it's super universal. But if I were to sell you a pair of leggings, there are like 50 different things I could say. So I could say, they're comfortable, they're gonna last for 10 years, they're not see-through, they don't show sweat, They were made in Italy out of whatever fabric. They're flattering. They make your butt look good. They have a cell phone pocket. We could say a lot, right, to sell a legging, but we have to test through it to understand what people actually care about, right? And what we find is that there might be one or two dominant messages that are going to make a lot of money for this product. There might be 4 or 5 supporting points that we're going to throw into a video, and then the rest of it doesn't matter at all. So I can tell you nobody cares about fabric. I can tell you working with a lot of apparel companies, nobody cares about fabric. But they do care that it makes your butt look good and it has a cell phone pocket. So in this case, with this cotton cocoon, the winning message was the middle one. So people always tell me the back of the sweater is beautiful. And the middle of the pack example, we tested over 200 headlines, but these are just examples. So middle of the pack was I ordered this in a small and a medium and kept them both because they drape so differently. And bottom was perfect 3-season sweater. So it's pretty random. I don't know how we could have guessed that, right? But if we had guessed, we would have been penalized, and it really changes the account. So that's how we test messaging. And I think this will work if I click. Okay. Everything that goes into scale is tested. So these are examples of what we call explainer videos, which is we take the proven components and throw them into a video that tells the narrative of the product, right? So the overlay style is tested. The imagery is all tested. I don't know why the middle ones aren't. There they go. The messaging is tested. Everything's tested, right? We think of it as taking a gun to a knife fight. When you test your creative, you are going to win the auction market, and you're going to get access to the right impressions. So when you see a Jenni Kayne out in the wild, know that it's been tested. And then testing over time. This is our internal testing database that we keep for Jenni Kayne. So together, over the last 2 years, this is all the testing that we've done. And I really mean it. Across our teams, we are extremely committed to this. And I mean, a day doesn't go by across 365 days a year where we are not testing. So what you get when you test, there are 2 things that you really get. One is that you get access to the top impressions. You win the creative game. Because again, the operating concept is relevance. When you test, you understand what somebody cares about, and then you can hammer it, right? So if you think that your CPMs are high, if you think that you're not accessing the right impressions, it just doesn't feel right, you're probably right, and it probably is a creative problem. So that's what testing lets you win that game, right? And the second thing it gets you is efficiency on the creative flywheel that you're building. So it's very hard organizationally to do what these guys have done. It's very hard. Most companies really struggle to do it at the scale that Jenni Kayne is doing it. And the only way you can make that viable is if you have a clear playbook for what works so that you can make it more efficient over time. So which creators and influencers are your best? Which models are your best? What lifestyle cueing is the most effective? What settings? How do you style the models? All of that, there's no guesswork in what these guys do. It's a very refined playbook. So I think that's the second thing that testing gets you is it actually makes this a viable effort for your organization.
As Emily mentioned earlier, product is the foundation of that pyramid she was showing, and this notion has absolutely transformed how our entire team across the company thinks about product. We operate on a hero product system, so we have these products that are driving a lot of the business, and this has been key to just our overall creative efficiency. We have a portfolio of hero products. We have new styles we're testing each season to see if they're candidates to be a hero product, and then we invest in them with inventory and also content needs, and we're supporting them across channels, and then these are the styles that are gifted to our ambassadors, and everything is sort of aligned to this hero calendar. And then this is just a quick look at our org chart. These are the 3 teams that really work together to drive this machine. So we have the brand team headed up by our chief brand officer, and you have the producers doing the shoots, the ambassador managers, the graphic designers making the assets, the social managers. Obviously, this has grown over the years. On my team, I have the growth team, the retention team, and the e-commerce team, and then our chief merchandising and planning officer manages all the buying managers and the inventory and planning, et cetera, production. And the key in this and the main takeaway is the arrows between all the teams. No one is siloed. Everyone is working cross-functionally and across the teams. And this has really been key to our growth and how I think we're going to get to be that $1 billion lifestyle brand.
Okay, so the 6 takeaways that we would sort of summarize this with. First is just to embrace that Facebook and Instagram and any algorithm-based platform are a creative game, period. And it really is just a whole different company when you get these things really working for them. So everybody's advertising on all these platforms, but when you really get them working, it's really, really impactful. So this is worth getting good at.
Product is key to this game. If you start with your product, everything above that just gets easier, and it's something that the entire team needs to be supporting, and having these ad supporting styles can really help your team grow.
The power of small scale tests is something that is just an organizing principle for everything that we do, is everything gets tested. So again, you're trying to figure out what people care about and attack that, and testing is what lets you do that.
Lifestyle cueing has been huge for us. Test and find what works for your brand, what's going to set your imagery apart from the rest. And then casting a wide net. So as I mentioned, about 10% of our content is what ends up winning. So you have to really cast a wide net to find that 10% that's going to drive your performance marketing.
And then lastly, just like at the macro level, just embracing that for a modern sort of contemporary direct-to-consumer company, content really is an atomic unit, and something that drives just true step function change. So again, I think when you consolidate the efforts into this aligned, series of groups in an org chart, and it really becomes a core muscle group, it absolutely changes the company, and it changes the revenue trajectory, but I think it also really changes the relationship that you have with the customer, which I think is ultimately like what most brands are trying to do, is just achieve like really high integrity, and mean something to people. So I think when you get the content right, you're really reaching people as human beings and not just as prospects, and it really does change the company. So it's not easy, wish you guys a lot of luck. It's not easy, but it really is worth it. And it's such a beautiful thing when it comes together into something as powerful as what these guys have done.
And then we have a code for you guys if you'd like to shop anything Jenni Kayne, 20% off. And we really appreciate you coming out. Thank you so much.